Hi, hello and welcome to the second episode of Desert Island Drams, the first being a remarkably unexpected success, apparently. So this week I have, fortunately, an old friend of mine, Mr. Lex Getley, with me. Lex worked with me on the west coast of Scotland for a time, working on a bar and a pub, and now has moved back to Sydney, where he joins us from, and is working in the financial sector these days. So, Lex, how are you?
Good. I'm doing very well. It's almost midnight here in Sydney, and I'm drinking whiskey with you. So life honestly doesn't get any better than that, of course.
And you did mention before that you've been to a restaurant this evening, something that in the UK feels a little bit of a foreign concept. So I think it's getting kind of back to normal there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as normal as it could be this stage. Yeah. So it was very nice to be out and about, and we did get dressed up and make a bit of occasion of it because it was very special to be that outside.
Well, I appreciate you changing before doing the interview with me then. So I guess first and foremost, what are you drinking tonight, Lex?
Tonight, at the moment, I've got a dram from a Tasmanian distillery called Lark. It's a special, I think it's called a director's cut or something like that. It's matured in port and sherry casks. It's made exclusively for one of our whiskey clubs we have here in Australia. So good old Aussie whiskey.
Very nice. Yes, I mean, I hear it is being made there now. On that, I guess, I mean, we kind of get very immersed in Scotland in Scotch whiskey and can become blinkered, I guess, at times. So the happenings around the world, apart from the odd kind of spike in Japanese popularity that we saw a few years ago and whatnot. Australian whiskey is obviously made in Scotch image, single malt pot still as a rule, spelt the same with no E, that kind of thing. Do you think the industry over there is continuing to follow in Scotch whiskey's footsteps, or do you see some divergence and some innovation, I guess, in production and methodology?
I think it's going in both columns, to be honest, Si, because there is a group of people here in Australia that do enjoy and closely follow the traditional Scottish malts and have very, very long and deep connections, growing up drinking them and whatnot. So there is a market. I mean, as you know, the industry follows what the market wants. So there are some sections of the market that do want your traditional cask-aged whiskies, but there's also other market that are looking for new things because they haven't drunk Scottish whiskey before, but they like the idea of something Australian because they're extremely patriotic. So there is a section of the industry which is being very innovative and is looking for new things. They're experimenting with different grain types and corns and calling themselves like an Australian whiskey made for Australians. So there is a lot going on. It's kind of following a traditional path, but there is some people splitting off too, which I think you kind of have to because it's a smaller market over here. It's definitely not as big as it is in Scotland. So if you want to capture a bigger share of wallet, you have to do something different to everyone else. There is some different things being done, for sure.
Is there anything, I mean, having spent some time in Scotland, and you obviously you do enjoy a Scotch whiskey and you're very familiar with it, is there anything you've seen in the Australian industry where you thought that would not, or I guess with some of the SWA regulations, could not happen in Scotland?
Yeah. It's funny. I came across one the other day and I actually ordered a bottle of it. So I kind of scoffed at it, but then ended up buying one anyway. Where there's a distillery down in Tasmania, and they've come up with a concept called, I think they've called it sloshing, where what they've done is they've half filled an export barrel with the new make spirit, and I think they've sat it on one end for like 2 weeks, and then they've tipped it over to the other end for 2 weeks, and they've kind of sloshed it back and forth, and then they've put it into, I think, an bourbon or like another finished cask and sloshed it. So they've got this whiskey in there, they're sloshing it around in the barrel, which like sounds, I don't know if it sounds good or bad, it sounds different, but it's just so weird, and I'm interested to see what it tastes like and what impact it has had, because I don't think it actually would have changed anything at all. But there you go, you heard it here first, sloshing whiskey.
It's interesting because we've seen those attempts. I mean, it's basically an attempt to hyperage something. It's trying to increase that interactivity. We've seen various attempts in that before, between using sound wave technology and even just very, very active and fresh wood. And in my experience, you can't replace patience. When you try one of those whiskies, you think Yeah, it's still only 3 or 4 years old, if that. I mean, I had one recently that was about 12 months old that tasted 4 years old, but it was meant to, it was designed to taste about 50 years old, and it just doesn't achieve it. I think part of the magic in whiskey is that it does take that time. The natural causes that are kind of influence onto a cask are important, and especially in Australia, I guess, where things age at 4 times the speed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just sounds a very impatient way of making whiskey.
I mean, I suppose it depends on what you're trying to do. Like one of my favorite whiskey stories is actually a place in Melbourne called Starwood. I think you came across Starwood when you were over here a while ago. But those guys, I love this story, and I haven't fact checked it myself. I kind of heard it from an ambassador of Starwood at a whiskey show a while ago, and I like the story, so to me it's become the truth. So what they did is they got their new make and they got their barrels, and they just put it in the barrels and went, meh, whatever happens after 5 years happens. And they pulled it out and they're like, oh, it's got notes of banana and cream and a bigger burnt sugar. Yeah, sure, that's what our whiskey profile is going to be. So there was absolutely no plan, no rhyme or reason to it. There was just a bit of a, well, we've got really good spirit, we've got a really good cask, let's put them together and see what happens. And good whiskey resulted. So I don't think there was any intentional shortcutting or any smugness or ill intent to doing something different. The same with these guys are doing the sloshing. I don't think they're trying to be pains in the asses or they're trying to be dickheads, but they're just trying something new. Like worst case scenario is you'll get a whiskey that's been nicely aged in a ex Pinot Noir barrel. I think I've said a different barrel finish each time because I can't remember which one it is. But you know, like worst case scenario is you get a whiskey that's been finished in a nice barrel. The sloshing might help it, or it might do absolutely nothing. But like you're not hurting anyone by trying this stuff, really.
Well, absolutely. And then, as always, there's no point in letting facts get in the way of a good story, regardless. But it's, I mean, I think you're right. The innovation and the trying of new things, it's no harm to anyone. It's something that, as always in Scotland, and as a result of the SWA's kind of at times stranglehold on the industry, that we should be opening ourselves up to more and more, and even just different wood types. And even if it's slowly catchy monkey, you know, we should be opening ourselves up to these sort of things. And maybe taking some of the unnecessary value placed on tradition of Scotch away. And I guess as someone who's spent time with the people in the industry, around the industry, you've worked in bars, and you also obviously now work, as I said earlier, in the financial sector in a very, very different world, I'm sure, and with very, very different people. Do you find the way that people value perceived premium products such as expensive whiskey, Scotch whiskey, single malt whiskey, etc.? Do you think that people in the industry value it differently to those in, say, your industry?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, I'm saying yes and no to all your questions because I like to be complicated. So, like I found a lot of the people that I interact with and work with every day, when we talk about whiskey and we start to like get into a really good discussion, I get excited. I'm like, oh, cool, there's someone who I've found I can really kind of connect with and have something in common with. Because if I don't have, so pretty much if no one is interested in alcohol at work, I don't really know what to talk to them about. It's a bit hard when I find someone and get excited. But there's a lot of like the old strong brands still have a very firm grip on the mass market. So your Shivers, your Johnny, Blue, you know, Glenfiddich, Glenlivet have a very, very strong hold on like a very big group of people, you know. And if they're going to spend money on an expensive bottle and buy something for the boss or for the dad, it is like a Johnny Blue or a Johnny Double Black, something like that. I mean, I've had both of those whiskies and I think they're fantastic ones. But then I start to try and talk to people about, oh, have you tried any single cask sherry editions from somewhere else, or what do you think of kind of peat blends and things like that? And people just kind of look at me like they don't know what I'm talking about. And that kind of whiskey is for like an elite group that exists somewhere else in their mind. Whereas they enjoy going into the big bottle shop and getting something which is trusted and true and a brand that they recognise.
So I guess in a way, the perceived value can sometimes be not actually monetary, but in an almost elitist and informational way. That it's not about being able to afford those whiskies; it's being able to know what you're drinking.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I remember Last year, actually, one of the guys at work at Hyperage said he wants to buy a bottle for his godfather for Christmas. He had about $120 to spend, $120 Australian. I think what's that, like £3 over there?
It's £3.50, yeah.
Okay. So he had about $120 to spend, and he said, what should I buy? And I think he was looking at a Glenfiddich 15 or something, and I pushed him towards Balvenie just because I know, like, even Balvenie, which is a massive brand, doesn't have that big a footprint here that I've seen. Like you don't hear a lot of people talking about Balvenie. So I pushed him quite hard towards the Balvenie 14, the Caribbean cask. And I think he ended up getting it, and he was just so blown away about how unique and niche the Balvenie Caribbean cask was. And I'm kind of like, and it's just little steps like that. You have to just slowly push people and introduce them to new things, which I don't really do because it's not my job. When I say it's not my job, like it's not what I get paid to do. I have to focus on financial stuff, not pushing people towards other whiskies.
I mean, it is actually our mutual friend Ross Blaney's job, and he clearly needs to do a bit more work at it by the sounds of things. But on that kind of note of introducing people to stuff and finding more whiskey and all that, we all have kind of whiskey's hugely a journey, and there's no right or wrong point to it. There's no start or finish, which is part of the joys of it. And I guess that the journey you have personally makes quite a convenient parallel to the journey the whiskey itself has in a cask for so long. We all have kind of interesting memories and kind of times where whiskey has influenced and led us to a point that was quite something. What's your favorite moment that was a result of whiskey?
I've kind of got three, so I'm going to say all three of them. So the first one I think was the first time I ever properly tried a single malt whiskey, and it wasn't on the rocks or it wasn't with a mixer. I kind of thought, right, I'm going to actually sit down and see what I can, what all this talk about single malt whiskies and if it's something that I enjoy. And it was actually a Glenmorangie 10, so the real fancy stuff. Like that was my first ever proper single malt, and I just remember that first sip kind of actually getting an understanding of what different flavors are and what nuances mean, and just being so blown away by that there's this liquid that exists out there which is just so tasty and it's unique in every bottle. I'm like, this is something I really want to learn more about. So it was my first sip of Glenmorangie 10 that kind of sent me on this whiskey journey that I've been on for about 10 years. The second one, so from that point forward, I kind of went, I always want to go to Scotland. So I had that dram in 2011. I had that. And then my wife and I, so Polly and I moved to the UK at the beginning of 2013 for a bit of a delayed gap year. And we're living in England. And I kind of thought, look, at some point I want to get up to Scotland and I want to go just visit Scotland or do something there. And then I was fortunate enough to be granted the privilege and honour of serving behind a bar on the west coast of Scotland with a great staff and an average boss there. So you can't win them all. But I remember having seen down my first night at Scotland having Glendronach 15, and to me it was like one of those, I can't believe I've kind of had the Glenmorangie 10 and said I really want to go to Scotland one day. That would be a dream come true. It would be to go to Scotland. Fast forward a year and a half, and I'm sitting in a whiskey bar in Scotland drinking Glendronach 15, a fantastic malt, about to start working behind a whiskey bar. I'm like, it seems a bit surreal. I just couldn't believe it. And I think the third one was actually when we went to Isle of Your Stag last year, and we visited the new up-and-coming distillery, Ardnahoe. Very exciting. And we actually got a chance to go do a tour behind the scenes and have a taste of just some of the wort bubbling away there. And once again, it was something which I couldn't believe was actually happening. I was in the thick of it, seeing new whiskey that was being made that was one day going to be drunk by someone else. I thought you can't get any, like you literally can't get any closer to whiskey than I was at that point in time. And for something that's been, I suppose, so special in my life and has featured at so many points, to be so close to it was just unbelievable.
Oh, it's quite a journey, and it's kind of nice to see that kind of Scotland played a big part in it as well. And I guess that leads directly on to, if we're doing lists of three. So which three whiskies would you take to your desert island?
I think the three whiskies I'll take to a desert island. The first one would be Talisker Dark Storm. just because it's so tasty and I love it. The second one would be, it's not actually a whiskey. I'm going to break the rules here. It would be Ronza Cuppa 23, the rum. Because to me, rum, you know, growing up in Australia, you drink rum as a teenager, as an 18-year-old, you drink Bundy, which is just fantastic rum. So when my friend first gave me a shot of Ronza Cuppa 23 and said, just drink this straight, I went, you can't drink rum, you can't sip rum. Rum's not meant for sipping, you're mental. Then I had the Ronza Cuppa 23 and it just changed my mind about rum forever, and it's just so easy to drink. So I'll take that with me. And the third one, I think, would be Lefroy, and I'm not too sure how to pronounce this bit, so I'll say it and you can correct me if you like. It's the Travel Lefroy, the An Quan Moore.
I'm not even sure I'm aware of that release. So I mean, it sounds like you might be trying to say Anku and more, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if that one is it cask finished or.
It's delicious.
Oh, okay. I guess it's interesting because you've got something peated, something very sweet in Ronza Cuppa 23. Obviously Talisker to peat again, so it's a good variation. But you've got some saltiness from your Talisker, and I think the winter nights by your fire on that desert island would be quite comfortable. And then if you found some lime and some sugar, you'd have some pretty good daiquiris in the summer, I guess.
Always available on those desert islands. Plenty of lime, plenty of sugar.
Yeah, you can't move for them. Anyway, Alex, I won't take up too much of your time. I do appreciate, and I know it's thank you for joining me all the way from Sydney, and I'll catch up with you again soon. Slanjava, mate.
Slanjava.